That's good. Welcome back to another Gotcha Attention video where I read creepypasta stories. Well, this one anyways. In my last voice video, I read the first 2 of 8 creepypasta stories on a website that I found on Google. I'm going to be reading number 3 and number 4 in this one. Let's start. Number 3, roommate troubles. This actually happened to me a few years back at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. My sophomore year, I roomed with a girl named Kara. She was a jazz violinist, but her main interest was opera. We had a small room on the 6th floor in a dormitory called I can't pronounce some of these words. Called Jupiter Hall. The walls were thin, and her last night singing and voice practices would keep me up late. After a month or so of lost sleep, I convinced her to move her last night practices to the music studios in the Muramium Theater building a block away. Around 8 o'clock one evening, Kara announced that she would be practicing late for an upcoming recital and probably wouldn't be home until around midnight. Great, I thought. That means I can go to bed early. I was beat. I had a horrible day in an acting studio, and I was ready to pass out as soon as I had dinner. She said goodnight and left coffee and sheet music in hand. I made some grilled cheese and soup, gobbled it down, and immediately began to prepare for bed. By the time I got out of the shower, my eyelids were so heavy I could hardly brush my teeth. I pulled on my pajamas and crawled into the top bunk of our bunk bed. I was out as soon as my head hit the pillow. I should take a second to describe the layout of our apartment. When entering the apartment, the bedroom was through the door immediately to the left. A bathroom was inside the bedroom, just past the bunk beds. UART is nice in the sense that you don't have to share bathrooms. Excuse me, that was another burp. Usually, I woke up to the sound of my apartment door closing. I opened my eyes and groggily checked my phone. Midnight on the dot. I rolled back over and closed my eyes. I heard Kara enter the room and stop in the front of the bunk bed, checking to see if I'm actually asleep, I thought. She flopped down on the bed below me, which was strange, as she was a stickler for brushing her teeth and washing up before bed. Then again, exams were just around the corner, and we were all exhausted. The mattress below me creaked and then was silent. I couldn't even hear her breathing. I started to drift off again. I was just on the edge of deep sleep when I was startled awake by a noise, a key in the lock, the door opening, and Kara entering our apartment, humming an opera tune. The mattress below me creaked. That was the end of the story. I don't know what to say to that one. Anyways, I guess I'll read number 4. And I might read number 5 too, because this video is kind of shorter than expected. Usually all my videos are short, but the last one was like 11 minutes, so. Then again, I talked for like 8 hours. Whatever. Number 4, kids in the dark. Growing up poor in the deep south meant sharing a lot with my little brother Ollie. Most often we'd pass toys, clothes, and skin conditions between us. Up until he was 6, we even shared a bed. Neither of us was happy about that. It was my 10th birthday when that changed. I got one present that year, and it was a bed of my own. Ollie was jealous right away, and I could understand why. He had to keep that half-broken down frame with the worn-out mattress. The one I'd gotten wasn't much better, but not being broken and worn was enough. Sleeping apart was a great feeling. It was freedom. No longer would I have to suffer the sudden and inexplicable kicks in the stomach. No longer would I wake up with Ollie's foot pressed into my neck like he'd stepped on Dracula the night before. At least that's what I thought. Right away, right after I got the new bed, the shriek started. At first I thought Allie woke up in the middle of the night and screamed because he'd gotten scared. Then the sound echoed through the tiny room again, and I knew it wasn't a normal cry. The room was always black as pitch after the sunset. The one window he had was pressed against a log leaf pine, and even the biggest, brightest moon cast no light inside. The shriek was just about drove me crazy. Even every night, probably the same exact time, these sharp yells would knock me right out of my dreams. It wasn't my mom or my dad yelling either. I knew what that sounded like, believe me. Most worrying of all, was the fact that I could never tell where it was coming from. It seemed completely random. One night, it'd come from somewhere near the closet. The next, it'd shout from a corner of the ceiling. Any hope I had of having my own space would get dashed every time, as only Ollie would silently slip into the bed with me, shaking like crazy. He'd collapse onto me and wouldn't let go until it was almost daybreak. Most times I'd take his hand and tell him everything was going to be okay, that it'd be over by morning, but I was never really sure. Over time, the shriek started changing. At first, it was only by small degrees, but then eventually it took on the primal hooting sound of a primate calling out its fierce warning. I had to clasp pillows to my ears to keep from going deaf. Mom and Dad never believed me or Ollie, basically because the thing, whatever it was, refused to make a peep when they were in the room. Apparently they couldn't even hear it through the walls, even though it was... I just dropped my phone. Even though it was definitely loud enough. The shriek just got worse and worse until I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. Me and Ollie were doing really bad in school. We just had no energy at all. I could sleep more deeply with my head propped up and my eyes open in the middle of the class than in my own room at night. Then, thankfully, we moved out of the house nearly a year later. I had completed all sorts of things, even a child's clumsy concept of suicide, to get away from the horrific nightly noise. There was no problem at the next house. It was a nice, white, cookie-cutter home on a dead-end street, and I welcomed the fact that it was normal. Once more, when we moved in, there was a bunk bed waiting for me and Aldi. No more broken bed, no more second bed. I ended up having to share anyway. The only problem was deciding who'd get the top bunk. I told Ollie deserved it. After all, I'd gotten the new bed way back, and he'd ruined it by climbing in it every night. What? He shook his head. I never did that. I always wondered why the noise stopped the second I was sharing my bed. Now I had the answer. Okay. So, that one, there was a little Ollie-sized monster in his room that would go and snuggle up against the big sibling, brother or sister, I don't know, that would go and snuggle up against the big sibling and that thing was the shrieking thing. That one slightly disturbs me. I swear if my sister ever gets in the bed with me ever again, I am going to kick her so hard. Okay. In the first video I said I'm not easily scared. Apparently that was a lie, because the last 4 stories gave me chills. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's true I'm not easily scared. I'm not easily scared when people try to scare me. But I get sort of frightened when I read a story that is creepy. Luckily for me, never mind, not very luckily for me, it's 7:30, so I'm going to be going to bed in maybe 4 hours from now. I go to sleep whenever I want to, but I go to bed around 9 o'clock. Not really. My dad's whatever. That's too much personal info. I think I'm gonna read. Well, I was going to read number 5, but this one's gotten up to 11 minutes, so I'll read number 5 and 6 in the next one. Thanks for tolerating me and my annoying voice, and I hope you watch the next one. Bye.